What's up abovers? It's Thursday the 26th of January, which means it's Australia Day, which is like the national holiday, just like King's Day in our country. And obviously, I've got something pretty cool planned, so stick around. Australia Day commemorates the landing of the first fleet at Sydney Cove on 26 January 1788, where Captain Arthur Phillip raised the Union flag. So, it basically symbolizes British sovereignty over Australia, making this holiday a bit controversial. But a holiday nonetheless. So since I was going to pass Fed Square anyway, I decided to take a stop just over here. There's definitely something going on. Of course there is, because in Melbourne there's always something going on. Right now they're setting something up on the stage, which makes me think that there's probably going to be a program for Australia Day. But yeah, unfortunately I'm not going to be able to stick around, since in about half an hour now I have to pick up the car at Southern Cross. But at least Australia Day is celebrated. Something's going on already at Fed Square. I'll tell you what's going on at Fed Square. Julz Down Under is going on at Fed Square. Haha! Yeah, I was asked to leave a drawing for Australia Day on this board, so I drew Flinders Street Station, which was right across the street, and left my tag. I then headed to Southern Cross to pick up a car. Not the car I expected, but I'm not complaining, y'all. I picked up my mate Sol in Footscray. You remember Sol from the Boxing Day episode I did earlier? So from Footscray we headed down the west coast through Geelong towards Torquay. Just an hour down the west coast. Welcome to Torquay, everyone. This is where our actual journey starts, because this is the start of the Great Ocean Road. Torquay is a seaside resort on the west coast of Victoria, relative to Melbourne that is. It's a small town that's famous for its surfing beaches. Now, Melbourne is notorious for its bad beaches, at least compared to other Australian cities like Sydney and Adelaide. If you ask a Melburnian where to go surfing near Melbourne, they'll either send you east to Portsea, which I visited in an earlier episode, or west to Torquay. So, Melbourne definitely offers surfing if you're willing to drive for it. So, after enjoying a bit of sun at Torquay Beach, time to head off to the Otways through the Great Ocean Road. The Great Ocean Road is a 240-kilometer road along the west coast of Victoria that runs from Torquay in the east to Alnesford in the west, near Warrnambool. It is the world's largest war memorial, built between 1919 and 1932 by returning World War I soldiers for their fallen brothers. We drove west over the Great Ocean Road as evening fell and saw the sun slowly go down in front of us. While driving, we searched for a good spot to stop and watch the sunset. We made it, and we took this picture here. If I ever had to choose one photo to sum up my entire Australia experience, it would definitely be this one. After the sun disappeared behind the horizon, we headed deep into the forest to find our camping spot to rest up for tomorrow. We spent the next day exploring the Otways, officially known as Great Otway National Park. It is located in Cape Otway, and it's very well known for its temperate rainforests, which house many waterfalls. In the morning, we visited the one near our campsite. The walk gave a good impression of the temperate rainforest, with heaps of tree ferns and every so often a mountain ash. Similar to the forest in the Central Highlands where I work. After about 3 kilometers, you hit the end of the road, Beauchamp Falls. We went down, had a shower, the water was cold! Then headed back the same way to the campsite. We drove through the Otways towards the coast and continued west over the Great Ocean Road until Apollo Bay. Pro tip: get your groceries here. You will not find any servo or supermarket between here and Port Campbell. So after stocking up, we headed further down the Great Ocean Road. So the Otways stretch out all the way to the southern coast, and at the tip it runs into Cape Otway, which is marked by the lighthouse over there. And along the lighthouse you can find a hiking trail which is called, of course, the Great Ocean Walk. fucking go.
The Great Ocean Walk runs pretty much parallel to the Great Ocean Road, except the walk goes along the coast in Cape Otway, whereas the road heads inland. Also, the walk is shorter, stretching only from Apollo Bay to Port Campbell. It will probably take you a week or more to finish it. The section of the Great Ocean Walk we took was basically a cliff walk with the ocean directly to our left. The result is these awesome views over the ocean. Just incredible. Fun fact, this is where the Bass Strait separates from the Great Australian Bight. We continued our descent towards the beach. As we neared the ocean, we grew more and more aware of the sheer power that these waves constitute. These are the strongest waves I've ever seen. You can just feel how strong they are. It sets the stage for getting philosophical. I remember Sol saying how crazy it is that these waves endlessly keep on crashing in, over and over again until the end of time. We also established that if we were to swim here and something went wrong, there's nobody in miles to come and save us. We cleared a long strip of beach to reach a nearby landmark called Rainbow Falls. I guess they are called rainbow because of the bright cliffside colors. The contrast of the bright colors with the green landscape and the blue sky is just stunning, but suggesting this is a waterfall is a big stretch. Didn't stop us from having a shower and a quick bite here though. Should you want to do so too, be mindful, the orange stuff is very gooey and muddy, so it's quite slippery. And you don't want to slip into these rocks, let alone into the wild ocean. After an hour or so we decided to head back up. We attempted a quicker route to get to the top, but it wouldn't budge. Plus Sol hurt his back while doing this, so bad idea. Unfortunately, we had to wander the long strip of beach back, so we could go up to the Great Ocean Walk. Silver lining, this is one of my favorite things to do while beach walking. Walking bare feet in the splash zone. We took the Great Ocean Walk back the way we came to get to the car park. Then drove a short segment of the Great Ocean Road until Lavers Hill to stop for dinner. Or supper, as Sol likes to call it. Afterwards, we turned right into the Otways towards the campsite, but wanted to visit one more waterfall before calling it a day. Okay, so for some context, we weren't really prepared for this trip, just tried winging it kinda. So when we got groceries from Apollo Bay, we didn't actually know that there wouldn't be any shops until Port Campbell. And it was very hot out today, so I had also run out of water. So I was a thirsty b****. After getting lost in the woods for a bit, we reached the Triplet Falls car park just after dusk. We walked the trail at a brisk pace and made it in time before it got really dark. But we didn't stop there. I already told you Sol is kind of a daredevil. And so am I. So we climbed the fence and then climbed a few rocks to reach the middle level of the waterfall. I filled my bottle at the stream and it was the best water I have ever tasted. No question. We then climbed to the upper level of the waterfall and took some great shots before calling it quits. We did so much in one day. We saw 3 waterfalls, we saw the Great Ocean and the Otway rainforest. Yeah, I think there's no question. This was one of my best days ever in Australia. After yesterday's belter, we decided to take it a bit easier for the third day and do the Great Ocean Road Classics. Usually, the Great Ocean Road is mentioned in the same breath as the 12 Apostles. That's one of the many limestone structures you can find along the coast of the Great Ocean Road. Not much to do other than just chilling out at a lookout or going to the beach. And you know what? That's just perfect for today.
We made it up above us, a 45-minute drive from the Otway along the Great Ocean Road. Our first landmark, the 12 Apostles, the main attraction of the Great Ocean Road.
The 12 Apostles is by far the most famous of the classics. Right now you're looking at the 2 closest and most iconic ones, but there are more. There used to be 12, but some of them collapsed, leaving a total of 8 still standing present day. There are lookouts for the 12 Apostles along the Great Ocean Road, just make sure there's available space for parking. One of those lookouts has Gibson steps, which you can take to go down to the beach and relax for an hour or so. The next one was called Lockhart Gorge. Looks sort of like a passageway for ships. You can go down to the beach here as well, and there's a cave here that you can explore. Did you know there's a word for cave exploring? It's called spelunking in American English and potholing in British English. There's also another cave at the beach, but you can't explore this one. Anyway, we chilled out on the beach for another hour or so, then headed on to the next. But first we made a stop at Port Campbell to do some groceries. Remember, this is the first place after Apollo Bay where you can do so. So after stocking up again, we wandered around town for a while, then headed further west towards the end of the Great Ocean Road. This one is called London Bridge. Unfortunately the main lookout was closed, but to be honest, this one was kinda underwhelming anyway. Especially when there's a London Bridge at Portsea from an earlier episode, which was way cooler. This one's called the grotto. Though I've seen this word before, we both had no idea what a grotto is. I'm assuming it means cave.
It looks like
So anyway, all these structures are pretty close to each other and there's no real exercise involved. So it's safe to say that the Great Ocean Road Classics are a very family-friendly road trip. And finally, this one's called Bay of Islands. No further comments on the naming. There are more of these limestone structures around, like the Arch and the Bay of Martyrs, so make a plan for the day if you want to see all of them.
What's up abovers? We are now in Warrnambool, all the way out west, which means this is the end of the Great Ocean Road. Does that mean it's the end of the adventure? Well, we still need to get back to Melbourne, so no. But we aren't going directly.
We drove north from Warrnambool, over the hills, for a duration of about 2 hours. We listened to Triple J's Hottest 100 on the drive there, which I think is similar to the top 2000 in our country. Except that in this list the songs actually do change. About halfway in, I started to see the mountains, meaning we were close to our destination. Grampians National Park. About this national park, at the time of European colonization, the Grampians had many Aboriginal names. The Jardwajali name for the Grampians was Gariwert. In 1836, Sir Thomas Mitchell named Gariwert after the Grampian Mountains from his native Scotland, although Grampians is likely also a mishearing of the native Gariwert. Once you enter the national park area, you'll be surrounded by mountains during the drive. At some point we saw an emu cross the road ahead of us, but I wasn't in time to get it on tape.
Yep, so we're not going to Melbourne yet. Instead, I welcome you to the Grampians. Now you've just already had a taste of how mountainous it is, so it's going to be quite a hike. So we just arrived here on the Saturday already, about to make our way to the campsite, make sure we're well rested for tomorrow, and then, well, we'll see where we end up.
So this is Lake Belfield, not an actual lake but a water reservoir, which mainly serves the main settlement in the Grampians, 6 clicks up north, Hall's Gap. It's basically a tiny town which is the center of every Grampians adventure. It has restaurants, campsites and other facilities, and it's the start of most popular hiking trails. Also there's heaps of roos.
Good morning up abovers. It's Sunday the 29th of Jan and I'm at Hall's Gap. I just had my brekkie, brushed my teeth and now put my hiking gear on. So there's a couple hiking trails in the Grampians that you can take. The most popular one is called Pinnacle, but we haven't really decided yet what we're gonna do. So we'll just about see, but right now I think it's time to roll.
Okay, so Sol went free climbing this mountain. I followed up after him, but about a quarter of the way in I didn't feel comfortable doing this anymore. I told him I'm not going any further and settled for the most popular trail at Grampians, the Pinnacle Walk.
Why is the weather always terrible when I'm trying to climb a mountain? What? Oh, this? Hey, just because the weather is terrible doesn't mean that the temperature can't be high. Or maybe the temperature isn't even that high and it's just the amount of exercise. I don't know.
I started off from Hall's Gap and took the shortest route to the pinnacle. While it's not exactly a high climb, it should be about 500 meters or so, there are parts which are incredibly steep. It's considered an intermediate trail, but don't underestimate the amount of work that you need to put in. Also another quirk, my phone had like 20% battery left at the start of my hike. I had to put it in ultra power saving mode to keep it alive. The fact that you'll be seeing this much footage is nothing short of a miracle. Anyway, about 2/3 towards the top, there is the pinnacle lookout with a nice view over Hall's Gap and Lake Belfield.
Yo, so you remember how Sol went free climbing all the way to the summit where I stopped a quarter way up? I'm standing at the pinnacle lookout right now and I can literally just see him right there on the summit of that mountain. It's crazy. I just called him and we waved at each other from like completely different parts of the Grampians. Man, this is such an amazing experience.
From the pinnacle lookout, the walk to the summit is not as much a climb, but rather a long horizontal walk. Once the forests have completely passed over into rocks, that's when you know you're very near the summit.
What's up, up-abovers? So I made it to the summit, or dare I say, the pinnacle. And now, enjoy the view, up-abovers.
I told you the weather was crap, so what did you expect? So from here on out, you have two options. First one is the fastest, you go back to where you came. The second option is to finish a loop via Wonderland Car Park. If you've seen my previous videos, you know I hate going back the way I came. So you know my choice was quite obvious. And if you plan to do the pinnacle walk as well, I highly recommend doing this loop. Why? Because this way you will pass every noteworthy landmark in the area. There is Silent Street, Cool Chamber, Splitter Falls, Wonderland Car Park of course, Venus Bath, and...
Alright, up-abovers, welcome to the Grand Canyon. And no, I'm not in America, because there's a Grand Canyon here at the Grampians as well. And I'll tell you, it's probably just as stunning as the thing you have in America.
Totally not biased, mate. You say weird things in the heat of the moment. Don't get me wrong, this is really impressive, but probably not as impressive as the Grand Canyon in Arizona. One last thing, it's probably recommended to do this walk counterclockwise. The trail from Wonderland Car Park to the summit is a lot more spread out. Remember how I said the hike up was quite challenging because of how steep it is? That's because I did the pinnacle walk clockwise. Oops. So around Wonderland Car Park, I texted Sol with like 2% battery left to meet at the car park in 15 minutes. Thank God I did that, because once I reached the car park, my phone died. And at the exact moment I approached the car, I saw Sol coming in from the other way. We chatted about our adventures today, so yes, he free climbed that mountain and claims to have mooned the town at the summit. Classic Sol. Since he was done a lot earlier than I was, he went to play with the kangaroos until I came back. At that point, we decided to call it quits for real and put an end to our Great Ocean Road adventure and head on back to Melbourne. I look back on this Great Ocean Road trip as one of my fondest experiences in Australia. So far. The whole trip felt like a wild adventure. It was the purest feeling of freedom I've ever felt. Driving off to anywhere I want, going wherever I want, sleeping wherever I want, and possibly having the best company for this specific trip I could have ever had. Not to mention, crossing off 3 Victorian bucket list items in a single trip. In terms of destinations in Victoria, most people would consider the following to be absolutely essential based on pull factor, wow factor, and relative vicinity to Melbourne. From east to west, that's Wilson's Promontory, Phillip Island, the Otways, the Great Ocean Road, and the Grampians. All these destinations are actively pushed by the Victorian government. I would also recommend doing the trip the same way we did, that is, by combining the Great Ocean Road with the Otways and the Grampians. It's the best bang for your buck and should be feasible since the Great Ocean Road runs right through the Otways and the Grampians are straight north from where the Great Ocean Road ends. Besides, if you want to visit any of these destinations anyway, you're going to have to use a car, meaning you should have freedom of mobility. And by the way, doing the trip the other way around is fine, but generally not the way it's intended. Now, if there's one piece of advice I must give you, is that you should prepare your trip well if you have high standards in terms of comfort. Here's what I mean by this. Me and Sol really didn't plan this out well. All we did was fix a car and make a rough outline of our destinations. For the rest, nada. So we got a reality check when we found ourselves in Torquay discussing where to stay when all accommodations were fully booked. It was high season after all. Luckily I had this Campermate app which also showed these free camping spots. It's not the most comfortable, but it gets you going. Luckily my company is also a rugged adventurer and not one to whine very quickly. Though to be fair, he didn't have much of a choice. Now if you ask me, I think it added to the experience. We were in the wilderness after all, why not make conditions a bit wild? Nothing says survival is more than sleeping in your car, staying in places with minimum facilities, and using waterfalls as showers. Am I right? Okay, to put it into more concrete advice, here's 2 things you need to know to prepare your trip well. First, book your accommodation in advance if you want to prevent having to sleep in your car. Note, it is illegal to sleep in your car on the side of the road. I suggest using the Campermate app to get a sense of your accommodation options. Bear in mind that the app does not show all available options. There's a bonus, however. The Campermate app does show all servo locations. Oh, and if you decide to go during high season, book your accommodation far in advance. The other thing is something I already mentioned before. Make sure to stock up on anything you need in Apollo Bay for the time you're going to spend in the Otways and the 12 Apostles. Especially stock up on water and get a big surplus if it's going to be hot. I repeat, there is no store between Apollo Bay and Port Campbell, so there is no opportunity to stock up on food and water in between. There is a restaurant at Lavers Hill which sells bottled and canned drinks, but be prepared to pay top dollar. So if you're not comfortable with drinking water from natural sources, make sure you have enough water. But all in all, don't let any of these things scare you off from going on your Great Ocean Road adventure. Yes, the Great Ocean Road is somewhat remote, but let's make one thing clear. It is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Victoria and the locals know this. You can expect there to be plenty of possibilities for accommodation. And the distance between Apollo Bay and Port Campbell is really not that long, trust me. Should you run out of water or food, you can easily reach one of these towns to stock up again. And it's not Tassie. You're not that far away from major cities such as Warrnambool and Geelong. Even Melbourne is within reasonable distance. Since I didn't think I'd have access to a car, I never thought I'd actually be doing the Great Ocean Road. I rubbed it off as one of the less important bucket list items. Well, I was wrong. The Great Ocean Road is a Victoria essential. Few things in life are more satisfying than driving along a 240-kilometer Australian coast with your mate and being able to look directly into the ocean every time you look out the window. If freedom had a physical form, it would definitely be a Great Ocean Road trip. And in my view, it's Julz Down Under approved.